It is good to be with you all this morning. I think I know most of you, but for those of you I don't, I'm Lindsay Gleason-Reed. I'm the Assistant Director here at the Community Foundation of the New River Valley. And as we're kind of doing intros, if you want to put your name and organization in the chat, just so we all know who's in the room, that would be great. So these sessions, just make sure the recording's on. Yep. So we record these sessions and add them all to our nonprofit resource library. I'll add that link to the chat. So anytime we record a session, we add it to this page and we add any materials that we share during the meeting there. If we have a meeting that is in person, we add the materials from the meeting on that page as well, just so you can have those to go back and refer to. Today I have the closed captions on. Those are helpful to turn on for accessibility purposes for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but also if you're in a loud space or can't have on the sound for some reason, they're also helpful. If you want to hide those, you can go to the bottom of the Zoom bar and you can turn those off. It just turns it off for you. It doesn't turn it off for everyone else, so it's your preference there. So this is our monthly third Thursday meeting, which funnily enough, we try to hold the third Thursday of every month. Sometimes it's shifted around a little bit depending on schedules. These sessions are aimed at nonprofit personnel, but anyone is welcome to join us if they're interested in the topic. It's a chance for us all to connect with one another and share ideas. We get these ideas from our personal experience working in the field, but also with talking to all of you, trying to keep our ear to the ground. What would be interesting now to folks to talk about? And a lot of times, as you might imagine, these topics are perennial: communications, fundraising. Other times it's more of what's going on right now in the world, where we can kind of meet the need to chat about a certain topic and exchange ideas. So we're always interested in topic ideas and people who might be willing to be a presenter. And we're always happy to hear from you all. So if you ever have a suggestion, please feel free to reach out to any member of the team. I'm the one who helps coordinate these meetings, so you can always send it to me, but we're happy for your ideas. For next month, we are holding that session on Thursday, August 21st. It's likely to be a virtual session. Sometimes we try to have an in-person session quarterly or so. This one's likely to be virtual and we're still working on the topic. But if you get our nonprofit e-news each month, we send that out twice monthly. That's where we post the registrations and announcements, and we do it on our website and social media, so you can get the info there. All right, so one announcement for the Community Foundation: it is grant season at the CFNRV. I know many of you are either working on an application or you've submitted an application already. For those of you who've already submitted, way to go. We're very excited. Those of you who are still working on it, you have until 5 p.m. tomorrow, which is Friday, July 18th. We don't accept late applications for any reason, so please get them in on time. And if there's something going wrong and you need help with, if something happens, just call us. We want to make sure we can help you get it in. So as a refresher on how this process works, once all the applications are submitted, we will start the review process with our team and a team of volunteers on a committee. All the applications are read and scored. And during that time, for the next few months, you will not be able to see your application in the system. So don't panic if you go and check the system. It will be hidden from you for the time being. If for some reason you need the application, I strongly suggest downloading your submission now. But we could always look it up in the system for you if it's later in the process. Decisions will be announced for grants in late October and early November. And we're just really looking forward to reading what you've all submitted. It's a great opportunity for all of us to get a sense of what y'all are working on and all the great things you're doing in our community. So that's our big one, and it will keep us hopping for the next couple months with those, along with everything else we got going on. So with that, I'll segue into our topic. So annual reports. This is a timely one for the Community Foundation. Jess and I are churning out content right now for our annual report. So we're looking forward to talking about this with you all and hearing from our great panelists today. So I'll call on each of our panelists, and if you want to do an intro and on what you do and maybe your experience with annual reports would be great. So I'll kick things off with Dawn.
Right, I'm Dawn Gifford with Havenwood Equestrian Center. We're fairly new and pretty small nonprofit in the area. We do a program for low-income teens working with horses. It's a mentorship program for them. And I did our first annual report just a few months ago. So I'm brand new at it, but I've got one under my belt.
And it was a great one. When I saw it, I was like, we're thinking about this idea. I want to email Dawn for her thoughts on this panel. Thanks, Dawn. Glad to have you. Lori.
Good morning. I'm Lori Gibbons, and I'm the Executive Director of Mission Delivery for Mountain View Humane. We are a spay, neuter, and wellness clinic open to everyone in the New River Valley and basically Southwest Virginia. We have customarily done spay neuter for the last 15 years, and I'm just going to throw this in as a little ad. We are now embarking on dental care and euthanasia, adding those to our programs. So more to come on that.
Thanks, Lori. And Bill Gilmer.
I'm with WordSprint. We're a marketing company, printing company, mailing company, all the above. Our involvement with annual reports is usually on the design side, graphic design, helping folks set them up. And then we, of course, print our fair share of annual reports in the region. So we see a lot of them, put it that way. A lot of annual reports come through our shop. So we're pretty familiar with the process. Although we don't do one for ourselves. So full disclosure.
But you could, Bill. You have lots of experience.
Yes. We just don't have time because we're always doing it for other people.
Yeah, Bill and his team have printed our annual reports for a long time, and we just really appreciate working with your team. And then we have Jess from the Community Foundation.
Hi, everybody. As Lindsay said, I'm with the Community Foundation, and we are in the thick of producing our annual report, which many of you may be familiar with. It's our biggest kind of marketing communications piece we do each year, so ours is pretty extensive, and just looking forward to hearing from all of you about your experience and sharing a little bit about our process as well.
Thanks, everyone. So like I mentioned when I emailed folks earlier this week and in the registration, we're hoping for questions when during the session. So I know there's already a couple in the chat. So feel free to keep those coming. I have some prepared questions for the panelists, but would just love to hear what you all are thinking as well. So I'll kick things off with a question for each of you. And it's thinking about what's the value that you see in creating an annual report for an organization? And I'll start with Dawn.
Okay, well, so the reason I actually did our first one was that one of the grant applications I was submitting wanted one of our annual reports. So I'm like, oh, I guess I need to make one of these. So that was the driving factor for me. But then as I was putting it together, I could see where it was a good tool. Like it was an excuse I could send an email to our donors. Hey, look what we're doing. Put it on the website. It's been good to reference the material. I've been able to pull some of those, pieces for different Facebook posts and things like that. So it just seems a good tool to be able to reach out and let people know what you're doing, especially our donors, to say, look, your money is going to do good things.
Absolutely. How about you, Lori?
Well, I agree with Dawn. It is a great storytelling tool. You can use it in all types of environments. It's a great way to showcase the success that you've had the past year and highlight those essential things numbers that you count and occasions that you might have, momentous occasions, milestones that you have that you can include in your annual report. It's also a great place to honor your contributors. And I think there's a lot of value to that. Some people require that, others do not. But I think it's a great place to honor your contributors.
Absolutely. Just what would you share about the value in creating an annual report?
Yeah, I would echo certainly what Don and Lori have said already about sharing important stories of impact, using it as a tool with donors. We certainly do that both with our current donors and prospective donors, and just kind of demonstrating the breadth of the foundation. I think the other thing that's a bit more intangible, but is despite all of the work that goes into ours, it is helpful. I think to our team and our board to see the work that we're doing. And as you kind of pull all that together that you've done in the past year, it's like, wow, okay. I mean, I can understand why we're all so tired, but we're also proud of the work that we're doing. And it becomes kind of this artifact over time of the growth of the foundation. And I think that's been really helpful for us to kind of steadily continue the work, knowing what kind of impact we can have.
Sure. Then when I joined the team, I knew I'd be working on the annual report project myself, but it was also really helpful as a new staff person to look at past annual reports to just see what we had done over the years and how programs had grown. Bill, you kind of have more of a 5,000-foot view in terms of you get to see so many different types of annual reports. What value do you see in these projects for organizations?
Well, I would echo what you guys have said already. It's as much for yourself, for your own organization, as it is for your constituents. It really is. It really does underscore what you've done and crystallize it in one document, one production there. So it gives you credibility. The thing that I think maybe people don't realize as much, though, is that annual reports are a marketing tool. They are it's your brand, it's your impact. I mean, yes, you're honoring, you're thanking, you're gathering it all together, but it's probably the most important marketing piece you'll do in the course of a year. So we have some suggestions along those lines that we can get into later, but yeah, it's a very important marketing piece.
We can't hear you, Lindsay. I don't know what's happened. You're not muted, but
Can you hear me now?
yes, we got you.
All right. Just my computer being its special self. Uh, so just let me know if that happens again. So when you all think about some of the essential elements that you would include in an annual report, for me, I think an annual report doesn't have to be one specific thing. I've seen ones that are a page front and back. I've seen ones like ours, it's more like 45 pages and everything in between. So I don't think when we're talking about an annual report, it has to be one specific thing, but I think most annual reports do include some essential elements. So what would you all say are some of the essential elements that you all include in annual reports? And I'd love to start with you, Bill, in terms of what you see with folks and the kind of the specific pieces that people include.
Well, the focus of most of the annual reports we work on is impact, and usually conveyed by infographics or short paragraphs. I know the annual report is a chance to elaborate more on things, but there is the low attention span in our society, so we're big fans of infographics and bullet points and things like that. But you're so right. It's let me tell you about one we're working on right now. It's for the New River Conservancy, and it's a map. It's a big, huge map of their service area for the New River. And the way it folds down to a little 4x9 thing with panels, and the side 2 is the annual report. So if you open it one way, it reads like an annual report. There's a letter from the executive director, there's impact, there's infographics. But when you open it all the way up and flip it over, there's the map, which we thought was kind of an interesting way to present an annual report. But most of the ones we work on are traditional booklets, either printed or just electronic, either way. I can show some of these later. I can give you some. I've gotten permission from most people, except Jessica, to show annual reports on screen today. So
Permission granted, Bill. I also have ours pulled up to show if anyone wants to.
okay, cool.
You can always share ours.
Yeah, we can do that later if we have
Yeah.
time. We can show you a few interesting samples.
That would be great. I feel whoever came up with a map idea for this one needs a raise. That's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that one. Lori, what are some of the essential elements that you all include in your AR? I know that you all have been doing the one for quite a while.
We have. I agree with Bill that impacts, the essential things that you do every day, and all those numbers are important. And we do put a few pages in our report around that. Whether it's how many spay neuters we've done, how many wellness appointments, vaccines, how much food we've given away in our pet food pantry, all those things are included. And it is a great marketing tool because some people don't know that we have a pet food pantry, or, that we do wellness exams. So it's a great way to get your story out there. We also include a leadership letter. So in our report from last year, we asked our founder to write a letter, and sometimes you write the letter for them and they tweak it, or they say, I don't like that at all. But that's okay, because when you're asking them to do it, they may think, oh, I don't have the time for that, But if you help them understand that, you're going to guide them through that, and you're going to share with them the important points that you don't want them to miss. So that can be helpful. And it doesn't have to be your founder. It could be a board chair, it could be an executive director, whatever you think is appropriate for your size organization. I also think it's important to have some story of, in our case, it would be a pet that, whose life we may have saved, or it could be someone that, their pet got lost and someone brought it here, and this is a true story, and we scanned for a microchip and found it, and that owner happened to be living in Colorado. Anyways, there are some really cool things that you can put in your annual reports that people will find interesting. I also think it's important to be clear and transparent about your financials, and you don't have to include the P&L statement. All you need to do are, take your functional numbers from your audit and put those in there in some format, whether it's a pie chart or whether it's, just some sort of graph. But I think that's also important. And, I think design is sometimes just a matter of personal preference. But I do think that, and Bill, I'm sure, has seen it all, but some organizations like a lot of pictures on their covers, and others just want one thing on your cover. But you do need to give that some thought, because that may be the difference to people opening your report or not opening your report. So I'd say those are probably the most important that come to mind right now.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned, all of what you said was I agree with. But
We
thinking about-
can't hear you again,
Yeah,
Lindsay.
Lindsay, you're quiet again.
Not sure why.
There you go. Now we can hear you. Sometimes.
Like there's a loose wire or something.
Yeah, this computer is well, that's a whole other topic. It's not my favorite computer experience. So something that you said, Lori, was thinking about showing the breadth of your programs. Um, and I was thinking about how a donor could interact with just one aspect of your program, or a client could. You could have somebody, in the waiting room waiting to pick up their pet from being spayed or neutered, and you pick it up and you're like, wow, they do all these other things, and
Right.
they just passed 100,000 spays and neuters. It shows it can be a way in to showing all the work that you're doing. And same thing with donors. You might be a donor who, you gave a $25 gift that you kind of forgot about 6 months ago. And then you get the email and you're like, wow, they do a lot of interesting work. So it can be a gateway into learning more about your organization and hearing all the great things that you're doing. So I appreciate that. And with you touching on financials, I think that's a really important aspect where that we include in our annual report. Jess, would you want to share anything more about how we approach that in our report?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as a foundation, of course, financials and financial management are a key part of what our donors and stakeholders want to see. So we always include a financial statement, and then a disclaimer that, you can find our audit online. And so that's always important to people from a transparency perspective. I would say, kind of adding a little bit to what others have said, the stories are really key. One of my earliest donor visits when I joined the foundation was with a bank president, and they had long been sponsors. And I thought it was so interesting that when I was doing kind of the pitch, he was sitting with our annual report, and he first turned to our page with all the photos of our board members to see who was on the board. And then he started flipping through the donor list to see who of their clients or people he knew were contributors to the foundation. And I kind of kept that with me in thinking about the audience for the annual report and how we use it. For us, it's definitely a tool to recruit donors. So I think our long-standing donors are more interested in those stories and that impact, which is a key part. But we also pay a lot of attention to making sure that our leadership and our donor sections are good, because it's amazing to me how much people want to be a part of something their friends are a part of. And so when they see those names, those photographs of people they know, that becomes kind of this tacit, stamp of approval, that they could say, okay, this is something I should be a part of, or my business should be a part of. And so that lesson has really stuck with me, that as even little things, it doesn't have to be done, but I think having photos of our board members has been really helpful, not just listing them. It's great to list them, but having photos and like what they do and what position they have, those are the kinds of things that I found people are really interested in looking at. And that they always, when they look through the donor list for their friends, and then they also, God forbid you miss a donor in the annual report, which we go through 6,000 times to make sure we keep them, but sometimes that happens, and you just have to kind of eat it and apologize and make sure they're there that next year, because those things matter. People do look at them.
Yeah, and that's why it's so essential with the proofreading process. Have multiple eyes from your organization on the proofreading. And I know many of you are one-person shows. If you can get a friend or a volunteer to take a look, it just even catching the grammatical stuff, but checking on spelling on donor names is an essential one. And I caught an error the other day, and I was like, how did this person's name get spelled wrong? I don't know. It just pulled from the system weird in the spreadsheet. So I was glad that I caught it, but you will hear from donors if it's misspelled or if they're not in there. So, but like just said, you just gotta, apologize and move on. Dawn, with you approaching this annual report project for the first time, and I know you're often a one, you're not quite a woman show, but you sort of are. I know you have some volunteers. How did you decide on what to include in your first annual report? I imagine, was it a bit daunting to kind of think about, because there's so much you could include?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't honestly even heard of annual reports until I saw the requirement on that grant application. I'm like, okay, I guess I got to find out what this is. Um, so I went online, I looked at some. I have a board member who's on another foundation, so she sent me an example of hers. I have a friend who runs a nonprofit. She sent me an example of theirs. So I just looked at several examples. And of course, Canva. And I'd found out recently, thankfully, that you can get a nonprofit free subscription to Canva, and they have a bunch of templates on there. So that helped me, figure out what things people usually include. So I kind of picked the essential ones. We want to keep it relatively small because, we're small, 40-page would be ridiculous. Um, and I gathered that, especially like Bill said, with attention spans, that it should be fairly photo centric. So luckily, we have lots of nice pictures of teens with horses, so that's great. Um, um, so I tried to just pick the essentials. A message from the president. Yeah, that's me. So and then um, bulleted out list of our major accomplishments through the year. We did, of course, our financials. We just did pie charts, or of the basics, trying to sum up what we'd done, income and output. I did a page, mostly just pictures and a little bit of text. We did our first summer camps. It was fun to just put a bunch of pictures of, hey, we did a summer camp. It was great. So picking a story to tell there. And of course the donor list. So I just tried to pick those essential things and tell our story. Oh, I did do also this kind of infographic idea. We did one page that was our impact by the numbers. So just kind of pulling out, some numbers of kids we'd impacted and how many volunteers we had and things like that.
That's great. And I agree. You use well, pardon me, you use photos so well in the report. I'm going to share my screen and show these examples. So Dawn claims to be a first timer on this annual report, and look at what a great job she did. It doesn't look like this is her first time. I think she is such an inviting cover. She kept text to a minimum. I wanted to go down to, so she's talking about what Havenwood does. She has some highlights here. You meet the team. I love that the horses are in there. I think that was brilliant. Also Snacks is just a fantastic name. But one that really stood out to me is, let me zoom out a little bit here. Well, if it would let me zoom out. Well, I guess I'll just scroll down a little bit. So this page really stood out to me because it's talking about specific numbers. And I just love when something is broken down like that, to show the impact. And like I believe Dawn said, she was talking about really basic financials, but you broke it down really nicely just to show the donor this is where things went. This is what we spent money on, and these are the donations you got. You're not the only donor giving, lots of other folks are giving. So Dawn just did a really, really nice job here. And like she said, she used Canva, and if folks aren't familiar with Canva, it's a online design tool that's fantastic. And nonprofits can use the kind of elevated, I think it's premium version for free. So I can share that out when we, in the follow-up email after this. And I'll also show Mountain View's annual report real quick. Let me see if I can show the full. So, I mean, you all must have so many cute photos to use, and they have such a nice inviting cover here. I love that they're talking about this huge accomplishment with celebrating 100,000 spay and neuter surgeries. So they just do a really nice job of, this is such a great infographic. And they have some great stories in here. So I'll send links out to these after we wrap up the session, because they're just such great examples and can serve as inspiration if you're working on a project for the first time or working on a project now. So those are two that I'll share for now, and we'll share more later. But I just thought you all did such a great job. So we can kind of do popcorn style here. What are some, if any of our panelists want to share, what are some lessons that you've learned from working on an annual report? Either something you definitely want to do or something you don't want to do.
I'll just say start early. You know, we're all super busy, and when you wait and wait and wait, and you know you have to do it, but you know, it just keeps getting shoved to the back. What I do throughout the years, I have a folder. You can do it electronically or in your desk drawer that, you know, if something comes up, you just stick it in the folder. And then when it comes time to really pull it together, you've got some great ideas in there. And I also believe that it's okay if you see somebody else's annual report or even a card somewhere, you know, a book cover that you really gravitate to. Well, stick that in your folder so that you know you can reference that, and you know it's okay to plagiarize a little bit, you know. um, so I think that's just one thing that's important.
For sure. Yeah. I think taking inspiration from other design pieces. I have a folder that I save of design pieces that I really like of that I'll go back to when I'm kind of stuck on something, and it helps kind of get me thinking. And it's like, do I want to kind of mimic that design or kind of take it and then do something a little bit different? But that's the source inspiration for sure.
Right.
Um, I agree. And also really agree with starting early. I think that's one that we struggle with at the foundation. You have so much going on every day. Sometimes you're like, "Well, how much time can I put into this piece?" But it's something that we use year round with donors. We bring it to all of our events, and it really pays off in terms of all, you can see the hard work in the annual report, and it's such a great piece to share with folks. What other lessons learned would y'all share?
So,
Or sorry,
go ahead, Jess.
I would just add a couple quick things. I think kind of on the same point Lori had of adding material, take photographs throughout the year of your different activities. And I know budgets are tight, but really think about if you have an event or something, is this where you need to get a professional photographer in? I think that has been a game changer for us over the last few years, where we've just put into our budget. We know at these events we're going to bring in a photographer because that content is so useful to us in all of our marketing, but particularly the annual report, because their photos are high quality enough to print and everything. So I think good photographs are key. And then two other things. First of all is don't get too crowded. Like I think a lot of annual reports we looked at last year, we did a redesign of ours, and so we looked at a bunch of other community foundations, and some of them are beautiful, but a lot of times they will cram a lot onto a page, and I feel like that's really overwhelming visually. So, you know, thinking about, is it easy to read? You know, is the font large enough that your older donors can read it? Those types of things. And then the final thing I would say is that, and Bill could speak to this much better than I could, but just as donors get used to like receiving things from you at certain times of year, they get used to certain components of your annual report too. So every year they're going to look for the board list, the donor list, the story about a donor. Like there's certain things that are just common every year. And so, you know, while you may be switching up the focus of a story or adding some new content, there are certain things that folks just get used to that they really like seeing year over year. And I think that that's important to kind of keep some of those pieces in for consistency, and that the story you're telling makes sense year over year as you're using the report. So those are my 2 cents.
For sure.
I have a couple of comments. And this is echoing what Jessica and Laurie have said already, but it's kind of a different way. Those of you that have worked with us on projects before, you know, we're a big believer that marketing and donor relations and fundraising is all about right message to the right people with the right rhythm. The annual report is your most important marketing piece. The rhythm of its production is important. If you're going to come out with it November 1st every year, then don't miss that by much. you know, a week or two maybe, but don't let it suddenly go to March because it's a marketing touch, and the rhythm, if it's consistent, builds trust. It builds credibility. So what we perceive the difficulty that most of our clients have is staying on that cadence, that rhythm, because life interrupts and chaos happens. And I think Laurie's suggestion of, you know, keeping things throughout the year, don't wait till the last minute and try to put it all together, but have a place where you keep stuff. But yeah, being consistent with the timing, with the rhythm is something I think is very valuable. It kind of makes me squirm thinking about it because we don't do that with a lot of our marketing stuff. But it's rhythm is very important.
I agree. And we try to get our annual report out by
Get a little bit closer, Lindsay. I think that's, try again.
I agree with what Bill was saying. We try to get our annual report out in late August, early September, and mailed out to folks. We also have a digital version that Bill's team does a really nice job of putting together. But yeah, it can be hard to hit. So I think one thing to think about is some of the information can't really be done in advance in terms of if you have financials for a certain period of time, you know, you got to wait until that period of time is over to share. But can you write a story that's sort of an evergreen perennial story that would be good now and be good a year later, 6 months later? Can you write that ahead of time? So what can you do to help yourself out to kind of take some of the workload off? And you know, I'm trying to practice what I preach here. I didn't quite accomplish that this year, but there's always next year with your planning process. But Don, did you have something to share?
Yeah, I was very lucky to get some advice from a friend. I was just starting on the process of trying to get material together to figure out how to do an annual report, and I had dinner with this friend, and she said, "You already have like a bulleted list of things you've done this year and all of that put together and some text from your webpage." I said, "Oh yeah." She says, "Well, put it into ChatGPT and let it compose some sections for you because just getting words on a page was a struggle for me. I'm like, I don't know how to write a president's message. I don't know what that should look like." And so I took her advice, not even thinking it would be that helpful. It was super helpful. So being able to take all of our kind of content that we already had, text about what we do, and then my list of all the things we'd accomplished, and then go to ChatGPT and say, help me make a message from the president. Help me put together a, you know, infographic of by the numbers. And it really spit out good content that I could then edit. And it really helped me get it put together. So highly recommend.
That's great. I think it is so much, you know, I do so much writing for a living. And sometimes for me, I have to have that pep talk of you just need to start writing, put something down and get a draft down. But it's so much easier to have some words on a page to then edit. So that sounds like such a great tool. And Jess and I work together on the annual report. So she'll put a draft in and I'll review it and vice versa. So it's just nice to have a partner on it, whether that partner is a person or a great tool like that.
Well, and I'll say for editing, even like I'll go now to ChatGPT and I'll have something I've put together and I'm like, can you help me make this more concise or more professional sounding? And it does a pretty good job.
That's great. I think the concise piece is so important, and Jess touched on this of um, there's so much you can say about your programs. I'm sure that all of us could probably talk for hours about our programs and maybe have no friends after that. But you know, you're passionate about the work that you do, but I think less is more with annual reports. If you can let an infographic speak for what you're doing, if you can have a photo tell the story, and there's words to accompany it, but if there's any time you can be more concise or pull back on text, it's think about how you experience reading a document when it's like wall to wall text. Even if it's the coolest thing you've ever read, it can be challenging to get in that space to read it. It's nice to have those additional visuals. So Next question for all of our panelists is, what advice would you give to organizations working on an annual report? And I think we've already touched on some of those pieces, starting early, having a partner in it, good photos. Anything else that we're missing in terms of advice for folks?
Everything takes longer than you think it's going to.
Yes.
Be prepared for that.
Yes.
I'd just say a little bit about branding, and I think Bill has touched on this. You know, try to be consistent with the branding of your organization, and, you know, whether that's a color scheme or whether that's through, you know, your mission, you know, if it's an animal versus a person, whatever it is, just try to incorporate that.
You know, that's an interesting point. We help a lot of organizations with branding and rebranding, but we always urge them to do it carefully because there is a consistency and recognition. So I wanted to, Jess, ask you and Lindsay, the decision to revamp your annual report last year. Love the new look. Did you get positive feedback? Did anybody say, wait a minute, I wanted it to be a little square purple thing again? And what led to that decision? Was it just like it's time to refresh, to be more modern? What was the motivation there?
Yeah, I guess I'll start, Lindsay, you can chime in. So it was our 30th anniversary last year. So we figured we had been kicking around the idea of a redesign for a while, just as you said, to kind of do a refresh, and try to make it a little bit more modern looking, and rethink the format. And so the 30th anniversary kind of presented an ideal opportunity to say, okay, let's do something, you know, special for the 30th. Now, this is the format we're going to use going forward, because we don't want to drive our graphic designer crazy, if nothing else. But I do think we got a lot of good feedback on it. It just, but I think to your earlier point, our brand in terms of like colors, font, is still consistent. It's just, you know, so there is definitely a different look to it, but it's not a total 180 from where we were before. There's certainly some consistency to using some of the icons that we have and infographics that I think, and then we are just lots and lots of photos, constant photos so that people can recognize folks that work with us.
Yeah, and I can show those examples quickly. So for a long time, we had done a square format for our AR, and you'll see that here it was kind of this 4 photos in the square here, all like some really nice ones. People usually will reach out to us and say, hey, I made the cover of the annual report, so they'll be excited. So this was the format that we had for a long time, which I think was really, I think it's a great format, but we've been talking about going from the square format, which is slightly more unusual size, but an unusual size can help you stand out. But we are going more for an 8.5 by 11, so standard piece of paper size. So we moved to this size, and we had a special 30th anniversary logo last year. But this gave us just a different way to work with space. And we did some work with pull-out quotes that I really liked. Because this is, you know, there's a lot of text here, but I feel like this frames it really well, and so forth. So we worked on putting in more visuals last year. And of course, last year was such a great opportunity to talk about in 30 years, we've done all this work. So that was a special opportunity, but we're going to be keeping a lot of these elements this year, especially with infographics, and we're always working on cutting down on text. So that's always one that we'll keep working on, but that's kind of how we approached it last year. One question in the chat that, oh, go for it.
Sorry, I'm sorry, but this may get to, I saw January's question in the chat about that, you know, they don't have a ton of photos. So I think a couple things is graphics. If you look at our annual report, we have a lot of, little graphic elements throughout. And there's a website called the Noun Project. I'll add it into the chat, but you can download, you can search for different kinds of icons and then download them. And that is kind of fun to play with. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid of stock photography, just be thoughtful about it. So, some stock photography is free, some stock photography you have to pay for. But you can, and I'll put a couple websites in for stock photography too, but so that it's not necessarily specific to your organization, but it's within the theme enough that you can utilize that to add some visual interest without having it be directly from your programs. And that just, again, just be thoughtful, don't have somebody who's in the middle of New York City, right? Like that's not going to make any sense for the New River Valley, but looking at what makes sense and using those photographs could be a useful way to do that. And we have done that before, not necessarily for the annual report, but for some other publications, particularly with children, where we may not have the right permissions to use pictures of kids and stuff. Stock photography there can be really useful. So while others are talking, I'll add some of those links into the chat.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jess. I would also add January, if you're doing any kind of outreach events, if you're tabling anywhere or if you're hosting something, those can also be an opportunity to get good photos with your volunteers and team members. And I know your team is often a one woman and sometimes maybe up to 3 people show, but any folks that you have at those events, I think grabbing photos is really important. And I think that's a great volunteer opportunity for folks. I think it's if someone has that skill set for someone who comes to your events or volunteers with you and they're willing to donate their services, if they're a professional at a discounted rate or for free sometimes, of course, you don't necessarily want to take advantage of that and always ask somebody that. It could also be someone who's more of an amateur photographer. And you can often get a really, really good photo on a lot of the smartphones that we have. So those are opportunities as well. Looks like Kat is volunteering to be your photographer January is what I'm getting from that. So perfect. We have that set for you. One other question in the chat that I wanted to get to before we get to other questions. Helen asked, would an annual report coincide with an organization's fiscal year? And I think it just depends. I can share from our experience. What's tricky about our annual report sometimes is the financial information and all the donors in there are, for example, for this year, it's going to be our 2024 financial information and donor information. But we have stories in the annual report that span from around July of last year all the way through June of this year, because we're including this year's Giving Day. So we also incorporate 2025 stories as well, but that's not necessarily how you have to do it. It's just sort of, this is the time of year when we work on the AR. I don't know if others have thoughts on when to put out your annual report in terms of your fiscal year, but that's how we do it.
I'll just quickly say our fiscal year runs July 1st through June 30th. So right now, I'm starting to put things together and hopefully get this out in November or early December. But last year I didn't get it out that early. So it's still considered our 24-25, our fiscal year 25 annual report. And that's the year the numbers came from, was from July 1 of 24 through June 30th of 25. And those numbers will come out later this year.
So we just transitioned to a July to June fiscal year, but we were on the other fiscal year before. And because of the timing of the grant application I was submitting to, I chose to try to get the most information in. So I did a 2024 annual report. but I'm thinking I'll try to transition and maybe, I know we're not in a rhythm yet, so I can have an excuse, but maybe try to skip to 18 months so I can get this coming fiscal year in our next one.
And I don't think really that people will, oh, I didn't see you talking, Lindsay. I couldn't hear you.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't think in general, people really notice if one date is off or, you're combining things, but I think donors would pay attention if you're gonna list your donors. I think donors would pay attention to what you've given them credit for donating.
For sure. One question that I wanted to ask Bill in particular are, and I don't know if you want to share some examples that you're talking about that you have, but what are some common pitfalls you see when working with annual report clients? And not calling out anyone specifically, but do you see anything there? And do you ever go back to a client and say, hey, you might want to change X or Y?
The biggest issue we have is clients that don't have all the information together and it just keeps dribbling in. Nobody on screen is guilty of that, so you're all off the hook. But we have clients that it's been, 5 months now since we started the annual report, and they're still discovering stuff they should have collected throughout the year, as Laurie was saying. That's the only real issue we have is the actual. I mean, the ones that we just print are easy, like the one from the foundation here. The design's done by someone who's a really talented designer. The files come in perfect. We just print it and mail it. I mean, but a lot of the ones we work on, we do the graphic design from scratch based on the data and the text and whatnot that they provide. And that's where it can get a little like pulling teeth to, we don't have the executive director's letter yet. It's been 3 weeks, that kind of thing. You want me to show a couple of these? Can't hear you.
I see, definitely. I'm sure
Okay.
that's what
Yeah.
Lindsay's saying too.
Yes,
Let-
yeah,
Let me try this real quick to see if I can,
you should be able to share, Bill.
I think so. Can y'all see that one?
Mm.
Yeah, this is Boys and Girls Club.
It's nice.
And this is one where we do not have any input on the content or anything like that, but we do the graphic design. And as you can see, big focus on the big pictures, trying to keep text at a minimum. And then infographics to hammer home some key points. But again, this took them collecting stuff all year long before submitting it. And the thing we always wait for last is the financials because it has to get back from their auditor and everything. So yeah. There you have that one. Let me show you a very simple one. Can you guys see this now or right? Hang on a second. Can you see this one, the ballet?
Yes.
Okay. This is 4 pages.
Mhm.
One sheet of paper folded in half. That's it.
Yep.
So, it doesn't have to be a huge, long document. It can be. I think this is a little text heavy, but they do have the pictures throughout.
Hey, Bill, Jennifer had asked in the chat if there's a sweet spot in terms of length and that you've seen, and I'm based on the examples you're showing, I'm not sure there necessarily is. It might be dependent on the organization, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Really depends on the organization. This is
Yeah.
DePaul, they're a 16-pager. We did not design this one, but big photographs. Can you guys see this? Make sure you can, okay.
Yep.
But no, there's really no sweet spot. It varies. I mean, most of our clients are pretty consistent year to year. If it's a 16-pager, it's usually a 16-pager all the way through, or if it's 48 pages and, then it's something else. Chip designed their own. I thought this was well done. A little heavy on text, but interesting look, feel. I say they design their own. They have a external designer, like the foundation does, that puts this together and sends it to us. And these electronic flipping books, we call them, are really good. They this little magnifying glass upper right is a keyword search that's excellent. You put in grants, and then every paragraph that has grants in it will display. You can click right to it. It's considered, the flipping book is considered one of the few fully accessible electronic books out there. A lot of our university clients use it because of the accessibility standards they have to adhere to. So I'd like to put in a word for that. Here's another one that we do not design. But you know, if you have horses or dogs, you're good.
Hey, Bill, and I guess others as well, but Kat had a good question in the chat about whether we all print our annual reports and why, and I'll start, but so we do print ours. Now we don't print it for everybody that would use it. We've got that flip book thing, which is great. Bill, I totally agree. It makes it super accessible. So but we do print in part because some of our donors are older and they really like having that piece. And then as we are going out and making asks or working with donors, it's just really nice when we give them a folder of information to have that really nice piece there. But I wouldn't say you have to print it. It's a little bit, I think, thinking about who your audience is and how you're going to use it will tell you whether you need to print, and if so, how many. And we rethink that every year. I think we've kind of hit the sweet spot for how many we print now, that we both mail some out and then just have a bunch for events. But I think it's thinking about who the audience is might help you decide whether or not it's worthwhile. Any other thoughts, folks?
We do have some clients that don't print at all anymore. They will announce it with just a postcard that has a URL and a QR code on it, and it takes them to the flipping book. So the recipient has access to what looks like a printed piece, but it's the electronic version. But most of our clients do exactly what Jessica said. They print a certain number for a certain segment of their donor base, and other segments of their donor base access it other ways. Let me just tell one little quick funny story. You guys were talking about Canva. About 3 years ago, when it was getting more and more popular, we started getting these documents, annual reports included, that we realized were not 8.5 by 11. They were 8.27 by 11.69. And it's like, that sounds familiar. That's the European A4 size, because that's what Australia uses. And Canva is an Australian company. And I think for a while there, the default page size when you went into Canva was the A4 European letter size rather than the 8.5 by 11. But we thought that was kind of funny. Our clients didn't even realize it because it's pretty close. But we produced quite a few annual reports there for a while that were 8.27 by 11.69. So.
I was just going to say we didn't print ours at all, but again, we're small, and then that was nowhere near, we couldn't pay for that sort of a thing, nor do we really need it for our audience. But I do want to try to figure out how to do that flip, but we're new to putting stuff like this on our website, and I like that flip book a lot better than how it is on ours right now.
I do too.
Hopefully
Okay.
Squarespace easily has a flip book thing we can figure out how to use.
I tell you what, anyone that's on this call, if you want to send me your latest annual report, we'll do you a flip book for free.
Wow.
Woohoo.
I guess you
good.
get my email, or all you do is
Yeah.
go to wordsprint.com, and there's a button at the top that says send a file, and just use that to send us a multi-page PDF of your flip book. Of your annual report, and we'll shoot it back out to you within a couple of days in a flipping book format. It's a permanent cloud link. They're pretty cool. They're accessible. So
Awesome. Thanks, Bill.
yeah. Oh, in the comments when you do that on that send a file thing, just put for Bill. He promised me this.
That's great. Thank you so much, Bill. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Good, good, good. That's such a great offer. And we're at 10, but one quick question on the flip book, Bill, that I hadn't noticed before. It has a sound icon. Will it read it aloud? Is that what the sound icon is in those?
No, I think the sound icon is the sound of the turning pages. That
Oh, okay. Yes.
yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, there are, if you go into some of the settings, we can make this to where no one can download it or print it, or we can have it wide open, or there's we can have it expire at a certain time. There are things like that.
For
But no,
sure.
the sound is whether you
Cool.
want to have that sound of a page being turned.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's like a nice little touch. I like the page turning.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll add with in terms of Kat's question, whether to print or not to print, I think it certainly depends on their organization. Some, like ours, will mail it out to not all of our donors, but donors who give at a certain amount. So that can be one way to kind of think about how to, if you do a mailing, or it could be just having a few to give out at events, or to have a leave behind to give to a donor. If you have a potential donor meeting or a potential sponsor meeting, it's a great thing to leave someone with for them to page through at a later time. So that's my 2 cents there. But thank you all so much for joining today, especially to our panelists, Bill, Don, Lori, and Jess. We really, really appreciate your you sharing. And I will share links to all these annual reports when I send the follow-up email with the recording. That will be coming to y'all in about a week or so, hopefully sooner. But thank you so much for joining today. It was great to see all of you. Take care.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Right.
Thank you.